Hi, Ruben Lara here, and I am excited to announce a new product in my Gumroad store called Gesso Ground Textures. It's a collection of layered PSDs that you can use in Photoshop, Clip Studio, or any software that reads and imports Photoshop's adjustment layers. Using them is 2 easy steps. 1, import into your document, and 2, adjust the opacity. That's it. Let me show you how it works. Since they are native Photoshop files, let's see how to use them in Photoshop first. First, we'll open some artwork that I want to apply it to. And next we'll open one of the textures. I've created them at 6,000 pixels square, so they should be plenty large for most images. You'll see that all they are is basically a folder with a light and a dark curves applied. Now the pattern on both the light and the dark is different. So the light obviously catches the highlights and the dark catches the shadows. And so any texture or image that you put underneath them is going to have the texture applied. So we'll just grab this folder, drag it over to the tab where our artwork is, and just let go. And there you go. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to hit the V key to hit my move tool, and obviously the texture is way too aggressive. So these are meant to be used somewhere, between 10 and 20%, based on your image. So I'm just going to set this at 20. So you don't need much opacity for the effect to take place. In fact, I'm just going to drop this down to 15 by hitting the numbers 1, 5 on my keyboard. And that's pretty much it. I can still kind of move this around, to find just the right spot for this texture. What I usually end up doing as well is just identifying places where the texture is not working so well. We'll give ourselves a mask and a brush, and we can just slowly kind of brush out where we don't want that texture effect to appear. But it's kind of nice in these little spots where I have a lot of that loose brushwork. I like it coming across the leg. Again, this is not meant to replicate the paint stroke textures. It's meant to give the impression that the board has been gessoed beforehand with some kind of ground texture, and then we've been painting over it. All right, yeah, that's pretty much it. So just a real simple, effective way of adding a little bit of that traditional texture to your artwork. All right, let's see how it works in Clip Studio. There's a couple additional things that I want to show you in the Clip Studio workflow, which I find really helpful. All right, so we'll do the same thing. We'll just open up one of those textures, and we'll go to our ground textures file, and this time we'll do a horizontal wide, and it just has just a little bit more detail there. All right, so we'll click the folder, hit Command or Control C to copy, and go to our image and hit Command or Control V to paste. Again, that's the same thing as coming up here to the menu and hitting copy and paste. And we have this exact same functionality. So we'll just drop this down to, somewhere around 20%. Now this particular image is only 3,000 wide by, almost 1,700 pixels high. So if I zoom out here and hit Command or Control T, you see that because the texture is a 6,000 pixel wide texture, there's a lot of flexibility I can have for, finding just the right spot and even scaling it down. This is an important part of what this gesso texture can do to your piece. It adds a sense of scale. So if I've painted this on a very small, maybe 6-inch board, then the scale of my gesso brush is going to be a lot larger. And so by keeping this texture rather large, we get the sense that this is a, I'm just hit no for now, that this is a small piece. By contrast, if we reduce the scale of this gesso texture to something like this, enter, and we zoom in, we immediately get the sense that the board is much larger because the brush strokes are a lot smaller. So adding some of this ground texture to your pieces does more than just give it a traditional look. It can definitely give you a sense of scale, and you really want to be aware of the scale of your own brushwork in your pieces as you commit to the scale of these gesso textures. So I think in this case, I'm probably somewhere in the middle, because as I look at my own brushwork, I'm imagining, a small, maybe like little 1/4-inch brush or something like that, doing, some of this detail work in there. So let me just hit Command T one more time, and maybe something around there. All right, that looks nice. And we can do the same thing. I'm going to add a mask, and we'll just grab one of our brushes, maybe something like the oil paint flat brush. We'll go to transparency, and maybe just start kind of pulling out areas where maybe I've used thicker paint, for all intents and purposes, that's kind of covering up that gesso texture just a little bit more. We don't want it running through everything, and kind of leave these thinner areas with some of that board texture coming through. Good. So you can see that both in Photoshop and Clip Studio, it's a real easy application. One of the nice things about the way I've built these, again, both in Photoshop and Clip Studio, is that I've built the highlight and shadow layers as curves instead of just straight black and white. And what that means is we can always come in here and tone the color of the shadow, for instance. So, obviously this is dictating how dark these, the shadow effect is in this case. But we can always go here to the red channel and turn that shadow warmer or cooler or whatever we want to do. So we can pop in here. A little bit of that coolness inside that gesso texture. Another nice thing about Clip Studio is the ability to save often used elements inside the material window. So let's go back to our Gesso 3 horizontal wide image, and let's open our material window here. And if you don't have it open, you can just come here to Window, Material, and we'll just click Image Material. Again, these are just categories, so you could really open any one of these and then come to the Image Material section. I'm going to make a new folder here called Gesso Background. You can call it whatever you want. All right. And we'll make sure that we're on the document that we want to save for future use. And all I need to do really is grab this folder and drag it into the material window. We'll give it a second to register. And there it is. Now, because this file is just essentially curves, adjustment layers, we don't see any image here. But let's go ahead and click on it and go into the settings. And we'll click on Material Image to give ourselves a thumbnail. And I've included a set of thumbnails with labels on them so that you can attach to your materials. And so this was the Gesso 3 horizontal. We'll say OK, open. And there we go. Now we have a thumbnail for that. Let's do that for a couple more, and just so you can see how helpful this is. So I'll come here to the cat's tongue. We'll do the same thing. Drop this into our material window. And hit OK. Good, so now we have the 1 and the 3 materials ready for us to use. So in the future, I don't even have to know where these are or find them or save them anywhere, as long as I'm on my same Clip Studio workspace here. And I can just choose from any of them. So in this case, I'll just grab this and drag it out. And there we go. Immediate access to some of these backgrounds we want to use over and over. So again, we'll kind of pull this down to something a little more useful. Maybe find exactly the shapes that we want to apply. Make sure we scale it. And that's it. Make sure to use them in subtle ways. You don't want the texture to overpower your piece. Just inform it a little, providing a layer of detail that helps viewers find something familiar and traditional. All right, hope you find them helpful. And as always, have fun creating.